Good morning, Matt.
Rick, good morning. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing amazing. It's a beautiful weather.
Yeah, did you have a good Mother's Day? Take care of Mama?
Of course, man. Got to do it. How about you?
Yeah, it's good. She didn't lift a finger.
Good for
And
her.
she watched like 13 episodes of Grey's Anatomy. That's what she wanted to do.
That's definitely a mom show for sure.
Yeah, it's like when your kids are little. I don't know how it is now, but it's like that. Just give me a day. Don't even talk to me. Kids be like, "Hey, we do like just go play in your room." You know,
Right. I don't even want to see you guys. Happy Mother's Day.
I don't think it's like that always forever.
Yeah,
But, you know,
I know. I totally
now
agree.
it is.
Yeah, no. Well, shoot, everybody's been homeschooling and they've had their fill of kids. That's for sure. From what I understand. So ours was great. The weather's been amazing, and as you know, we're here. Our corporate office where we film this and record this is actually set right next door to the gym, and the gym's cranking today. So.
Hey, we just had like 12 people out there.
I know. It's amazing. So for all you guys listening, that we'll do a quick COVID update since we're a little bit ahead of the curve for most of you guys. The gym's busy. Traffic's picking up. Like, things are good. And so far, thankfully, and again, it's a bit early, but so far, we're not seeing a spike in cases or any negative ramifications. Yeah, knock on wood. So again, time will tell, but right now things look really good, and I love the fact that we've got some normalcy back, and there's a little bit more energy, and people are happy, and the fear is going down a little bit, right? We got, we sold 5 new memberships last week to our gym, to the training gym, which is great. Anthony also sold 5 at the women's gym with no marketing at all, and we just barely got our marketing off the ground here. So it just goes to show you that there is, again, a huge chunk of the population that's ready to get out and about, right?
Absolutely.
So as of last week, we're a bit beyond this now, but as of last week, we lost about 20% of our customers to freezing, right? Which is just like, hey, not right now. And it's hard to argue that in this environment, especially when you're going for 50 plus as a target clientele. And then of the ones that were left, we were split about 50-50 between virtual and live. And then, of course, this week we're seeing much more people come back to live, which means less percentage of virtual. But, still 50% virtual, even though my mind is like full on brick and mortar, is pretty good. And I think it speaks to the fact that you need to be flexible and you need tools for both. And thankfully at Alloy, we've got like the app. And so like we're able to service people just as well virtually, and we had this playbook. And so now because we're not as busy live as we normally would be, we're able to sort of organically, with ebbs and flows, resource coaches to either virtual or live, just depending. So if it's a slower hour, one coach takes it, right? And the other coach will work virtual for that hour, like in the back office. So actually it's working out really well. And again, it takes a team of people that's not afraid of change and ever evolving situations, which is kind of the world in general all the time. So it's really, I'm proud of our guys to see that. And so far we're doing really good. So for those of you guys that aren't out yet, just keep in mind it's coming for you. And I really feel bad for some of you guys that are pushed way, way back. But all I'll say is that it's amazing to be open, and it will be a great reminder for all the things that you missed about your gym and that you took for granted, just seeing other people's faces and kind of what we get to do for a living, right? To get people excited about, their health and fitness, and I don't know, just see their smiling faces every day when they come in, and that's like on steroids right now. So it's really been awesome to
It's
to
like
see
you're seeing your family again.
It literally is, and that's again being in a smaller, intimate personal training model where you know everyone's name and their spouse's names and their family stories and where they're from, and it's just great. It's like you're literally getting a part of your family back together.
Yeah, there's a couple of folks this morning that hadn't seen each other because one of them just came back today, and they didn't stop talking, I think, the entire session.
Right. Can't even get them to work out. It's like, what happened with this? Did this happen? What happened?
Yeah.
But that's the stickiness, right? And when we've done a decent job making it public, like, without being off-putting, like how people are happy to come back to the gym. And so I think any of you guys that are behind us, when you start coming back, in a tasteful way, make sure you let everyone know that it's fun, that they are missed, that there are people here, because when the people that are in the groups that might be a bit nervous to come back see that their friends are there, they want to go back and see their friends, right? And so they come back to the gym, and like you said, it's like a reunion. How are you? How's the kids? Oh, did so-and-so graduate? Was it all digital? What was that like? There's all these great conversations going on. So that's our update, you guys. I think, as we do these come out about a week later after we produce them. So just keep in mind that we're on about a week delay. But right now, we're about 50-50 virtual, and we're still about 20% down overall on clientele. And but we're selling new ones, and we're slowly seeing those people come back. So I'll just update the metrics every week for everybody listening.
Cool.
So that being said, we want to switch it up a little bit today and not go so COVID related and, talk about business, but again, talk about it through the lens of like a technical tool. And so speaking of being open during this time period, we are still practicing social distancing and working in your own space. It just gives people that confidence, and it can be done. And today what we're going to talk about is one of our favorite tools for training, maybe how to use it, why to use it, what that looks like. And that's kettlebells. It just so happens that kettlebells make a perfect tool for a stay in your own space social distancing workout. And so I know that we're using them a good deal right now. And the purpose of today's podcast is just to break down the pluses and minuses of kettlebells, maybe how we use them, how we view them for an adult clientele, the things that we think are good about them, the things that we think are maybe not as good for this crowd, and dig in. Just again, it's a little bit more in the weeds or down rabbit hole, but I think it'll be interesting because we're still going to look at it through the lens of a business.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something, you know, that people go and they search gyms for. People like kettlebells. They think they're really cool. They like putting their hands on them. So, I mean, kind of give me your thoughts on how do you make that the best kind of environment in your workplace? Like, how is that cool factor achieved?
Yeah, well, part of it's just by default. Like, I mean, fitness is trendy, right? And now what's old is new, and we can probably credit a lot of this to CrossFit if we're honest, kind of bringing back what, you know, I mean, it's been around forever. It's not like CrossFit invented barbell complexes, right? It's like they were done by Olympians as warm-ups for like millions of years. And so, and same thing with kettlebells, right? You go back to the turn of the century, you had these strongmans and unitards on the beach, you know, lifting really heavy kettlebells and doing the same exercises we're doing now for general adults. But they are cool, and they kind of speak to that functional, hardcore feel. And so I think people just like to do them. When you look at the way that we use them, in a lot of ways, it's kind of funny because some of the exercises that we do with them could be done with a lot of other tools, right? And so if you look at something like a single arm row or one arm row, I mean, you can do that with anything. You can certainly do it with a dumbbell. It's been done all the time. But we typically will program into that kettlebells. Because why? Well, they're just cooler. So when we talk about our sales presentation as an example, and one of the 4 phases of the 1-hour sales presentation is let people put their hands on things, we always say let them touch the tools. And what that means is let them put their hands on the cool things, right? So let them hold kettlebells. And it doesn't matter the exercise they're doing with them, they're just cooler. You know, case in point, we were talking about this earlier. When we first launched our licensing company, I was still going out and training the gyms that we were working with. And I went to a big commercial gym, and the owner was taking me on a tour, and he said, yeah, we have kettlebells, you know, here, this is our personal training room. And they had a blocked off room just for training that was full of all the functional tools. And then I said, well, do you also have these tools available to your general members? Because that is very beneficial, right? Like if you have a personal training room, great. But in this day and age, people want to get to those tools, even if they're paying you $30 or $9 a month, they still want to be able to use the cool stuff. And he's like, yeah, we have the tools over here. Like there's a whole nother section of the gym that's dedicated for just general members to do functional training. I'm like, well, that's good. You know, I think that's a good idea. And I said, well, do you guys, you know, one way to drive engagement to training is through education. And so what about having like a kettlebell clinic or things like that? Do you guys do that? He said, oh yeah, my trainers teach everyone how to use kettlebells. He's like, you'd be surprised, man. Our members really know what's up. They know how to use them. So I swear, as soon as he's saying this, we're walking by, and there's a guy in the functional training area, and he's holding a single kettlebell, and it's one of those really small ones. We had those for some reason early on.
It looked like earrings.
Yeah, it looks like an earring or like like a pendant you wear on a necklace. I don't know, it's like a 2K or something. I couldn't even get fingers in the thing. You know, it's so small. And so this guy's got one of those, and he's marching back and forth, looking in the mirror, and he's walking back and forth and eyeballing himself, and he's talking to himself like you looking at me? What? You know, like he's manning up to himself. It's really weird. And so I'm watching this, and of course now the owner's watching, and he's probably thinking, oh no, right? And the guy's walking back and forth, and he finally squares, you know, like shit talking to himself, and then he squares up to the mirror, he looks himself straight in the eye, and then he imaginary quick draws the kettlebell like a pistol and like shoots himself, and then like reholsters it and starts the whole routine over again. And of course I just look at him, and he's like, oh, you know, never mind, like we need some work, you know, and we keep going. But you know, I always refer back to that story and think about it, because certainly, like, that's not the use of a kettlebell or how it's supposed to be used. But that guy, in his own mind, was a legend. He was a Western gunfighter. But what's the cool tool that he picked out in the gym, right?
Yeah,
to
man.
shoot himself with.
Been watching a lot of Tombstone or something.
Yeah, exactly. He's your Huckleberry, right? But like he's walking around with this tiny kettlebell doing a quick draw exercise to himself in the mirror, which is laughable. And there are some crazy people in gyms, as we've seen. Just go online and check it out. But my point is they're really cool. So when we talk about using them in here, the cool factor is you can have people do anything with them. They can do step ups, they can do carries, they can do rows, they can do goblet squats. There's a million ways to use a kettlebell. And some of those ways are not advantageous over another tool other than the fact that it's cool.
Right.
So I would say there is a cool factor. It gives people a little bit of that. Everyone wants to feel like they accomplish a hard workout. And sometimes the tool itself lends itself to feeling more hardcore. Yeah.
Well,
like they got a great
don't
workout.
know. I mean, they go home and tell their friends that they use kettlebells at their gym. They don't know that they could be done with lots of different tools.
Well, exactly. Think about so later they're watching an ESPN special and it's like a lead up to a sports event or a lead up to a UFC fight or whatever. And they see these athletes training with kettlebells, and they're hanging out with their buddies and they're like, oh, I do that. Like, yeah, they do. I do kettlebells at my gym, and they might only be doing a row or a carry or something that you could use you could use a bucket of water for it, quite honestly, but it doesn't matter. It feels cool and it looks cool when you're doing it. And they're fun to hold on to. And so, there is a massive cool factor to kettlebells.
So what we talk about this in our Rules and Tools podcast. We use all the pieces of equipment have to be able to do 900 different things with it, right? So one of the problems we see is coaches that come in and maybe they're fascinated with kettlebells, that cool factor on the other side with a coach, and they try to only use kettlebells or try to force that onto clients. You've seen that?
I have. I think that's the hardest thing for any coach to disengage or separate themselves from is their own likes and dislikes, right? So a case in point, if your coach or your personal trainer is a power lifter, you're probably doing powerlifting. Right. If your coach or trainer is a cardio freak, you're probably doing lots of cardio. If that person is a kettlebell guru and does kettlebell competitions, or they're in this particular time fascinated with kettlebells, you're getting a lot of kettlebells, right? And it's really hard to break apart from that, because what ends up happening is if you force your likes and dislikes onto your clients, you're sort of pushing them towards things that aren't necessarily aligned with their goals. So here's an example. So someone joins our gym. It's a 45-year-old female that wants to lose weight and shape up. And she's relatively active, might play tennis, do some other things, but she hasn't been like lifting weights, and she wants to lose body fat, maybe lose 20 pounds, whatever that is. She or he, whoever that is, doesn't care what the tools are or the mechanisms are. They're coming in for an end result, right? Yeah. If you're so married to to them having a max deadlift, or, to them learning how to do a kettlebell snatch as an example, then that's not their goal. Now, they will buy into that goal because you're going to probably teach your favorite implementation with passion, but I would just beg you guys to stress test what you like versus what your clients need, right? I mean, I would say that if someone is 45, 50 years old, unless they come in with a specific goal of deadlifting a lot of weight, the risk to risk to benefit ratio of heavy deadlifting for general fitness when the goal was to lose 20 pounds and move a little better is just not there. And I'll argue that all day long. I mean, I don't have to argue the physiological benefits of a deadlift. I can do it. And guess what? I can hip hinge in 18 different ways, right? So when you look at that through the lens of kettlebells, if you have someone who's like new to kettlebells and they're very passionate about it, or they are a kettlebell competitor or something, then they will lean heavily into that tool. And the problem with that, as Matt, and what we've seen is if you're trying to teach people lots of volume of Turkish get-ups, kettlebell snatches, kettlebell cleans, whatever those things are, those are technical lifts. And so there are easier ways to get people to 20 pounds of fat loss and feeling better than having to teach them, how to manage the flip of the kettlebell so that they don't go home with giant bruises, right? And big lumps on the back of their arm. Like, no one signed up for that. And they don't have to do that, you guys, to reach their goals. They just don't. So I would say that there is a massive cool factor, but you have to temper your own sort of views of how cool kettlebells are with what the client goals are and what they really came to you for. And that's not why they came to you. So let's not force them into that.
Well, yeah, we don't force them into anything. And what you'll find is your clients really appreciate that. And they learn, like, they like certain things and they get it. They learn that it's really not about the tool necessarily. And there's many, many different ways to get something done, which is, great.
Well, let's face it, everyone's different. So there are people that do appreciate like skill acquisition and learning, getting good at something, getting proficient at something, right? But as you know, getting proficient at kettlebell lifting isn't absolutely necessary to reach a fitness goal, right? And so, I would say that it's a large percentage of our clients, if we program something in like a kettlebell clean, which again, if you're not great at it and you don't understand the punching through the kettlebell and the relaxing of the grip and then the grabbing and all the things that have to happen in a timely manner, and let's face it, not all your clients are neurologically efficient enough to like get those cues and put them all together without a ton of teaching, right? I mean, it's a large percentage of our clients on something like a kettlebell clean that we just default to a dumbbell. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I would probably say 80% or more. And
or I just wouldn't even program it. I mean, over the years, honestly, I won't even put in like kettlebell snatches anymore, just based on our population and our group sizes.
Right. And then there's people listening who are very good kettlebell practitioners who are going to say like, hey man, like if you teach it right, people can do it. Or, you should hand out sweatbands so people can do it. It's like, yeah, that sounds great, but start pumping 60,000 sessions a year through your facility for 28 years. Then tell me how it looks, right? If you're a one-on-one trainer and you're going through a couple people a day, maybe it's worth it. I would say it's not, and I don't think it's scalable for your business overall. I think it's bad for you if you get stuck again in that rabbit hole of, one tool only solves all problems.
Yeah, I mean, you just run the risk of getting people hurt / they're not having fun. They may not tell you.
Right.
They go home and they can't move their arm. It's not enjoyable.
Yeah, kettlebell snatches for folks that aren't neurologically efficient, that don't have great T-spine mobility, it's just like, come on, bro. Like, there's a lot better ways to get on top of that, right? And like you said, clients appreciate it when they try it and they're like, ouch. You're like, all right, well, here, let's do it this way. And it's a completely different exercise, but they can actually do it. There's something about building that self-efficacy too. Think about people who haven't worked out in a long time. They come into your gym and you give them this tool that beats the tar out of them, and they're not very self-confident. It's like, I don't want to do this. This sucks, right? I want to do something that I can actually do that makes me feel good about myself, where I can go home feeling like I accomplished something today, not like I failed because I couldn't master the punch through of the kettlebell and a kettlebell snatch, right?
Well, I mean, it's just for us, I say I wouldn't program it. That doesn't mean that we don't have clients that come in, maybe ask for it. All our coaches know how to do it and can teach it under the right circumstances. But overall, as a business, I wouldn't be pushing that.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's the part about being mature enough as a coach to disassociate what you like, your personal likes and dislikes, with what's good for the clients. All of our trainers are that way. We have a guy on our team who's a serious power lifter, right? Really strong guy. If you go out on the floor, I'll see you doing, high level, like kettlebell snatch test, that kind of level of metabolic training. But that doesn't mean that it's for our clients, right? And in a lot of ways, it's a deterrent and a distraction from the main goal that they came in with. You'd be better off making them feel successful and good with what they accomplished, and then parlaying that positive energy into making healthy food choices that day. That's going to get them 50 times further down the road than being proficient at a kettlebell swing or a kettlebell clean,
right?
As an example. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Well, you always talk about this study, and this is a great positive to kettlebells, but you can tell us about the kind of the vertical leap and kettlebell swings.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I think it's NSCA study, but I'm not sure. So if it's not, sorry guys, but I'm gonna say it's NSCA study, which National Strength Conditioning Association, which is who we're both certified through. So they took a group of athletes. So these are athletes that are already trained, right? And they split them into two groups, and they had them all do a vertical leap test, which is a very common test for explosiveness. They obviously use it at the combines and NBA and everything. So how explosive are you? And actually the NSCA has a formula based on your weight and how high your jump is. That obviously that's a sign of power, right? That's a good measure of power, because if you're really heavy and you can jump really high, you're really powerful. And you get that weight up off the ground like that. Well, they split this athletes into two groups, and they all did a vertical leap test. One group did specific jump training. So they did resisted jumping, they did form on jumping, things like that, right? And that's all they did to train for it. And you would think that specificity of that would be good, right? And so the other group, though, only did kettlebell swings, and they actually did it with a 16K kettlebell. So for an athlete, a 35 point something pound kettlebell is a pretty light implementation for a high level athlete.
Not very much.
And the rep scheme for that wasn't heavy, right? It wasn't like what you would think of as explosive based training. It was more like sets of 30 seconds, which you could do almost 25, 30 swings, with a light kettlebell in that amount of time. Okay, so these two groups trained in these two ways. They got back together and they retested the vertical leap. And lo and behold, the athletes that had been doing kettlebell swings showed on average a higher, increase in vertical leap than the athletes that had been training specifically to jump, right? Now the study cited like the disinhibition, meaning when the weight from the kettlebell is low, right? The sort of, for technical term, slamming on the brakes, right? Stopping that weight and then returning that energy back up. Yep. And if you're kettlebell swinging correctly with that snap, right? Glutes tight, legs tight, zip up the pants, all the different cues, that mimics leaping perfectly. If you think about if you guys know kettlebells and you think about a good kettlebell swing, it looks like someone swinging their arms back and jumping in the air, right? Yep. And so again, with a lightweight, high reps, lo and behold, these athletes showed better vertical leap. So when I look at that through the lens, it's just one study, but it's interesting. And when I look at that through the lens of our everyday client that comes to the gym, I think, well, that's awesome, because if that's one of the things that you lose first as an aging adult is explosiveness, right? And that crosses over to a lot of different things, whether it be like sporting event like golf or skiing or whatever that may be, or just one of the nervous system functions that you want to keep, right? To stay young and fit. Well, that goes first. It goes out the door. And so I know that I can't necessarily jump train that population because jumping might not
can't handle it.
Yeah, it might be counteractive to, or it might be a detriment to an injury, or who knows, right? It's like, and there's a skill in learning how to jump correctly, right? But in a pretty short amount of time, barring any injuries, we can teach people how to swing a kettlebell. And as we saw in the NSCA study, it doesn't have to be that heavy, so you don't have to crush people, right? The risk of injury would be pretty low if you know how to teach it. So we are taking something that is a simple tool, and it's relatively easy to teach that particular movement to people.
That's
and
one of the easier ones.
Yep. And as long as they don't have any injuries that prevent it, you can actually give them very explosive strength with that tool as opposed to having them jump. So how cool is that?
Without any impact, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I love it for that population. As long as you do it right. That's the key.
You've seen some bad ones?
I've seen some bad swings. You see them. I'm sure any coach listening to this has seen it. And if you know how to use kettlebells, it's pretty egregious at times, And
what swing do we use?
Yeah, well, listen, there's a million terms for them, but we use a Russian swing, which is like more of a power swing. It doesn't go above overhead. And people say, well, why do you do that as opposed to like what was called the American swing? Some people call it the CrossFit swing, which is like more of a squat swing. It's more like vertical, and it goes overhead. So you take your arms overhead. Well, if you look at the population we're working with, some of them don't have the T-spine mobility to even get overhead with integrity. So they get into like, extended lumbar and some weird positions, to get that kettlebell overhead. So they're really they don't have the shoulder mobility to do it. Plus, I would argue that we're using it as a hip dominant movement, which is sort of more back and forth. And when you get into a squat swing, right, you're moving more vertically up and down. So you're really not even working in the perfect pattern for that as well. But that's what I typically see, The best one that I've seen, and sadly enough, this was actually being coached by a coach to a client. So it was an older lady, and she was sitting on a stability ball, and she was doing seated stability ball kettlebell swings, which if you understand what a kettlebell swing is, right, is a hip dominant movement, and it's that movement from flexion to extension.
You can't move your hips. How does this work?
Right. So you're sitting down with a closed hip. So it basically became like this really awkward seated front raise.
Well, maybe that's what he was doing, man.
No, he was saying that I was standing there. It was like, hey, we're going to do some kettlebell swings, and it's seated. Well, as this poor lady's shoulders fatigued from this weird double one kettlebell front raise, he was telling her to do it more explosively. So it turned into bouncing the kettlebell off of the stability ball, which would return it to the top position really quickly.
Did she knock herself off?
Exactly. I was going to say, she hits that ball any harder, it's going to shoot right out from under her ass. She's going to fall right on the floor, But it's the craziest thing I've seen. He probably just knew enough to be dangerous about kettlebells. But if you're gonna do them, you guys study up. Take the RKC, which is a strong first now, and there's 1,000,001 of them. We do one through our buddy Colin McGarty up at Seacoast Kettlebell. He's a kettlebell ninja. So I'd say reach out to him, see when he's going to have his next certification once this dust clears.
So you're saying stability ball swings are not good?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. Seated stability ball kettlebell swings are a no-go. Yeah, that was a bad one. And
I wish you should have filmed that.
And I always feel bad about that. I don't know how these people get these secret gym videos because A, I don't have my phone on me, and B, I don't have time to like.
Some of them, I think they got to be staged, man. There's no way.
I know. This was real.
Cable machines flying, you know.
Well, I mean, shit. I just told you too. Like a quick draw exercise, like this guy's gunslinging, and then the next person is doing a seated.
Where do you work out, man?
I frequent all the gyms to see the most ridiculous things. Yeah, just rando, like public gyms. So
let me get in this one. So, I mean, performance-wise, say kettlebell swing, that's one we use a lot. It's easy to teach. It's great. But if you look at what a lot of our active aging clients need, which is muscle building, how does that go hand in hand?
Well, I would say you can build some muscle with kettlebells, but really, if you understand the science behind building muscle, it's really time under tension. You just have to do that. When you look at like a bodybuilder's training, there's a lot of volume in there. And sure, powerlifters are big dudes, but at some point they've got a good base of lifting to get to that point anyway. And they're not doing a ton of reps. But if you really look at what it's going to take to build muscle, like if you have a male client, he wants to lose weight and by the way, wants to get his arms bigger, he's not going to get that from kettlebell training. So I think the best way I've heard it described is that you move a kettlebell and you lift a weight. And so if you want to improve movement quality and explosiveness, like if you look at a swing as an example, right? There are times in the swing when it's weightless, you're not under tension, right? You're just not.
Right.
And so that plays really well to learning how to like fire your core musculature and your muscles quickly and in a timely manner, like neuro patterning, when to fire what.
Yep.
I mean, Stuart McGill talks about this a lot, right? When you look at the world's best athletes, it's like they present this sort of core double pulse. And so let's say I'm playing tennis or let's say, Michael Jordan is dribbling and he puts his foot in the ground to make a cut. If he was wired to measure core activity, his core would turn to stone in an instant. That's what gives him that stability to change directions, right? But stable is slow, right? And loose is fast. So it's kind of this weird balance of the two. And the way that it's typically handled is there is a boom, slamming onto the brakes, right? That core fires, and then when the switch direction, boom, right? So it's bam, bam, every time. And so you can almost mimic this with the kettlebells. As a matter of fact, I think I went to a seminar from Stuart McGill when he taught a swing that Bruce Lee was practicing. Because you look back on it, that guy was pretty far ahead of his time. Yeah. And he would do this single arm swing, and at the top of the swing, where you would say be in a punch position, because remember he's got it in one arm, he would just pulse like bam, his whole body would just tighten up, and that quickness, right? Because that's what you're teaching yourself to do. As a matter of fact, Stuart McGill did a lot of work with some high-level UFC athletes, George St. Pierre, guys like that, and they all exhibited this really fast double pulse, turn to stone, relax, turn to stone, relax. But that turning to stone and relaxing isn't the constant tension that you need for muscle building. So I think kettlebells are good for teaching movement and explosiveness and athleticism, probably not the best for muscle building. Now, mind you, if you did a ton of volume of swings and you'd never done them, you're going to feel it in your glutes and your hamstrings, things like that, of course. If you did 1 million overhead presses, your shoulders are going to be sore, right? But for the most part, it's going to be easier to build muscle with exercises that are more conventional, that are more time under tension, and using kettlebells more in the competitive or athletic-based arena, right? And so the way that we handle that is we'll program in, say, kettlebell swings, whether it's in the workout or as a finisher or whatnot. But we always make room in everyone's program for whatever their particular body part is that they want to work on. So for a lot of guys, stereotypical might be arms, right? Well, when they finish their workout, we're going to let them do some conventional, old school time under tension, bicep curls, whether it's with a barbell or dumbbells or whatever that may be. And maybe for a female, it might be triceps, right? So it's like you're going to do some tricep press downs or just some of the basic things that they aren't the core pillars or the big rocks in our programming. We're going to let them do it. So I think you can actually build a program for general fitness where you let people get both.
Oh, absolutely.
But if you want to be a bodybuilder or you are trying to put on a lot of mass, I don't think kettlebells are the best way to do it. I just don't. Because you're moving them. And if you look at kettlebell sport as an example, and you look at how funky the form looks, it's all about being efficient, right? It's all about using as little energy as possible to move that kettlebell into those positions so that you can do more lifts and more volume in a certain amount of time. And so I think a lot of kettlebell teaching, is that's sort of the competition style. The hard style is more full body tension, things like that. But again, if I am doing a kettlebell overhead press and I'm firing my glutes and squeezing my quads as hard as I can and then locking my lat, so to speak, and then pressing, all of that is good for function, right? It's teaching your body to be stable. You're on your feet. You've got unilateral load, right? There's all these things going on. But is that going to be the best thing to give me, like barn door delts or whatever you call it? Probably not, right? That's why you don't see a lot of bodybuilders training kettlebells only.
Right.
So I think it's a fine mix. Most of our clients want to move better and look better. Kettlebells definitely fit into the move and perform better, feel better. And then if you want to look better, certainly they'll help you burn some calories. But overall, you're probably going to have to do some conventional exercises on top of that.
No, that's what we do. Have a good balance. I mean, then you got to play to your crowd a little bit, right? I mean, you can't. All the people coming in maybe a little longer than tooth, as you say, and then they play tennis, they golf. So we got that performance stuff, and we do our muscle building stuff because let's face it, they may be losing muscle, as they age. So we're just trying to keep them in the game.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I mean, listen, and everyone, we talk about this all the time. Like everyone's a high school kid at heart, right? Like that guy that you have in that's 50 years old that has high cholesterol and he's borderline diabetic, right? Pre-diabetic. And he's got a big belly, and his doctor and his wife have been on him about coming to the gym. Mm-hmm. The first time we sit down with him in that starting point session, what does he always say at the end? He's like, yeah, I need to lose some weight. All these people are on me to get in here, and I wouldn't mind, I used to bench this in high school and I wouldn't mind getting my arms a little bigger. And we're thinking, man, you have bigger fish to fry. Like you shouldn't be worried about that. You got health reasons to be here, but we can't forget the emotional connection to these body parts and the fact that he had dumbbells under his bed when he was in 6th grade and he still wants to do those things. Right. So the great thing about relevant programming is you can take a tool like a kettlebell and help this person move better and feel better and be more explosive. And then you can also do the time under tension and the quote unquote emotional exercises that people enjoy that are going to get them some of those results. Because I guarantee you, if you're trying to help him, get into better hip extension, be a bit more explosive for his golf game or whatever, kettlebell swings are great, but he's going to be a lot more bought in if every time he comes in, he gets to get his arms a little bit swole, right?
Absolutely. And
that's important because the more he comes in, guess what? The more you can help him.
Yeah, you got to find a way that motivates him.
Yep, for sure. So that's how we use them. I mean, they're not the best for muscle building, but I would say that there's a place for them for sure because, again, what's our motto, right? Looking good, and that's relative, right? Feeling great. Well, feeling great has a lot to do with how you move, right? And living life to the fullest. Well, if you like to hike or if you like to play tennis or golf, or like you said, the things that are popular around here, well, certainly kettlebell swings are going to help you with that. Right?
Okay. One of the big ones that we noted here, and I'll make sure we don't miss it, is talking about unstable load with the kettlebell.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that's great about kettlebell. If you take an exercise like a figure 8, right, you have the centrifugal whipping force of this odd object. And so maybe we'll call it that. It's like an odd object lifting. So sandbags, right, slosh pipes, kettlebells to a certain extent, right? Get this offset load behind your wrist. There's some physiological benefits to like overhead pressing with that offset. It's a little better for your shoulders. But really, I like it because it's an odd object and it just makes things more awkward. And that will definitely help your core. And if we look at, being unstable, having an unstable training environment, we get a lot of questions from younger coaches who are like, hey, why don't we do more like, and I'm doing air quotes right now for you guys who can't see it, why don't we do more balance work, right? And so when you think of balance work, you think about the trainers at a gym who take a Basu ball and they turn it upside down. That's the thing for you if you're not in fitness. It's like a half sphere or whatever. It's like a half a ball. And you flip it over and you stand on it and you do squats.
Do some squats.
Yeah, or you do just, you stand on a balance pad, and you do lunges, or you stand on one foot and do some side laterals or something. Well, the real studies on that, you guys, there's a whole body of evidence that supports the fact that beyond sort of ankle rehab, right, there's not a lot of benefit to that. And it really doesn't mimic real world application of odd objects, right? I mean, rarely are you lifting weights in a rowboat on the ocean, right, that's moving around everywhere. Or you're not like lifting during an earthquake, right, where you're being shaken from underneath, right? You're just not. What you're typically doing is standing on solid ground, and there's an object that's odd. Think about your kids, right? They're odd objects. Like you bend down to pick them up, they're moving, they're squirming.
There's one on the shoulder. I got one,
Exactly. You got one over the shoulder and one down by your side. It's like, oh, you're doing a carry. You're racked over here, and this one's down by your side. It's like, so there's so many ways to take kettlebells and do odd object training because we like to say you want a stable surface, but an unstable load as opposed to an unstable surface with a stable load, right? So that's why in our programming you don't see Basu work or a lot of balance because there's not a lot of research that supports, again, going beyond rehab that it helps. Plus, it reduces the load. So if we're trying to help our clients get stronger, right, which is a huge benefit, certainly to active aging clients, right, because you're losing explosiveness and some strength goes along with that. Well, your load is going to have to be so reduced to stand on one foot and do side laterals or curls on a Basu ball, you'd be better off doing that particular exercise just standing, right? Just stand on stable ground. And then if you want to create some instability, have them carry an offset load, right? Single arm farmers carry, or, if they're healthy enough, do a figure 8 or do some kettlebell cleans or do a single arm overhead carry, right? And use an object that's odd and that moves around, sandbags, slosh pipes, those kind of things that are moving, right? Those are much more beneficial than unstable surface training. I think Eric Cressy wrote a paper on this for his master's degree, but I'm not sure.
Oh, did he? Sure.
Yeah, I believe he did. I might be misquoting him. But
were you doing like Basu squats back in the day?
I never did any of that stuff, only for fun. We used to have one of those bongo boards, I think it's called. It's like a skateboard with a roller underneath it, but we just had that for fun. It was just a tool that we bought, but we didn't do. Obviously, if you're going to be standing on a wooden roller with a board on top of it, you're not squatting a lot of weight. And if you are, you're just asking for injury.
It's a great thing to do to your older clients.
Right. Well, everybody's seen the picture of the guy doing it looks like a 135-pound squat while standing on a stability ball.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's circus tricks. If you want to do that for the gram, go for it, dude. But if you make a client do that, you should be shot. That's a terrible idea.
You see it though. Hell, you saw seated kettlebell swings for guys.
Those aren't dangerous. They're just dumb. That's different.
Dangerous.
Right. Yeah. Well, it depends on who's sitting on it, I guess. But that could be really bad. But yeah, so I like them. I like odd object training. I think it's great for core engagement. I think it mimics more real life. You're standing on stable ground. So you're being pushed or hit, or you're changing directions, or something's affecting the environment while your feet are stable on the ground. Right. So don't stay off the balance work if you can help it, unless someone's doing some kind of rehab.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, you got anything else to add? I think we hit it all, man.
No, I think that's it. I think overwhelmingly, you guys, we really like kettlebells as a tool. It makes a great tool right now for social distancing. I would just say, don't get so married to every single move that kettlebells, that kettlebell sort of purist would teach, because again, teaching people to do those exercises is technical. It takes a while. And you might end up beating them up in the process. So we love the tool, but just like everything else in our programming, and for you guys, put the right lens on it. Test your own, thoughts and ideas about kettlebells for you, and then make sure you really stress test those with your clients overall. And it's a great tool. Feels cool, looks neat, but just make sure you use it right. And I think that's the ultimate message for today. Kettlebells are cool, but
everything's better with kettlebells.
Yeah. What was that? JP Sears?
I forgot to talk about JP Sears.
If you guys don't know, he just makes parody videos, so go check him out. He had one on functional training that I thought was just great. But he said that, and this is true. He's like, kettlebells make everything in my life better, but mostly just lifting kettlebells, right? So, but case in point, get great at lifting kettlebells so that you can lift more kettlebells. So, think about how to use kettlebells in your programming that makes everyone's life better and gets them to their goals, not necessarily makes them proficient kettlebell lifters, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, that's all I got.
All right, thanks, Matt.